Elena Whitaker stepped outside for air and found a woman in cream silk waiting in her path with a little boy at her side. She said Adrian's name like a verdict. In that instant, Elena knew this was not confusion. It was an ambush. The woman said Elena could stop pretending, because Adrian had warned her Elena would make this ugly. Elena asked who she was. The answer came back cold, the woman he lived with. The one with his son. A glass slipped somewhere behind them and shattered softly on the stone. Elena looked past her and saw Adrian at the ballroom doors, completely still. No surprise. No denial. No rush to fix it. His silence told the truth faster than words ever could. In front of the entire gala, Elena understood the humiliation before he admitted it. She had not been left behind. She had been replaced. By the time Elena got home, the house felt too clean. That was Adrian's favorite kind of order. No fingerprints. No loose ends. No room for questions. He liked rooms that looked untouched, as if no one had ever fought in them or cried in them. Elena stood in the hall in her satin gown, heels in her hand, and watched the phone on the console light up and go dark again and again. Adrian had gone silent. Celeste had not. There were messages from numbers Elena did not know, as if gossip had learned to text. Elena asked who she was, but no answer came. So Elena did what she had always done when Adrian grew evasive. She looked. Quietly. Carefully. That habit had once helped her survive his moods. Tonight it became investigation. In his desk, she found club receipts from Scottsdale, 2 different memberships, pediatrician invoices, pharmacy charges, school lunch deposits. An annual portrait sitting for a child she had never seen. One set of records belonged to this side of town. The other listed an address she did not know. Then she found a second key tucked into an insurance envelope. Same brand as theirs. Same engraving. But a different number. It was not a spare. It was a duplicate from another life. Elena slowed her breathing. Her mind did not. A second home. A second child. Maybe a second life. Maybe she was the late arrival in her own marriage. She looked at the family photo on the console table and understood something terrible. The man in the frame and the man in her marriage were not the same man at all. One had been built for witnesses. The other had been hiding in plain sight. She set the papers in a neat stack. Adrian had spent years teaching her to doubt her own instincts. If he wanted her confused, he had failed. Now she had questions. And questions could be dangerous. Elena went to the club because rich men trusted habit. They forgot what they had said over cocktails. They forgot what names they used when they felt safe. Habit made people sloppy, especially men who believed service workers were furniture. The manager recognized her, smiled too quickly, and led her to a side office. There she heard it from a receptionist who thought she was whispering low enough not to be remembered. Adrian Whitaker had a second family unit on file. Husband. Wife. Child. Elena did not speak. She only stared until the woman's face drained of color. Then she asked for the dates. The receptionist would not say more, but hesitation said enough. This was not recent. It had history and paperwork. The manager tried to smooth it over with talk of administrative confusion, but Elena had heard polished lies for years. By the time she reached the car, her hands had gone numb. Her driver kept glancing at her in the mirror while Phoenix burned white outside the windows. Adrian called at 3:14, then again at 3:16. On the third call, she answered. He told her not to do this in public. Elena told him there was clearly a public version and a private one. He said she did not understand what was at stake. That almost made her laugh. He had another home, another woman, another child, and still spoke as if she were the problem. Then he told her to wait at home and hung up. Elena looked out at the desert glare and felt something in her harden. Not rage yet. Something colder. Precision. The kind of focus that comes after humiliation has already begun. Adrian did not wait for a private conversation. He invited Celeste and her son to dinner, then invited Elena to be there too. That was his mistake. He still believed humiliation was management. The table sat in perfect symmetry, like a magazine shoot arranged by a liar. Celeste wore cream silk. Her little boy sat beside her, serious and silent, as if someone had coached him to behave through adult weather. Adrian stood at the head of the table in a navy suit, calm as weather. He said they needed to handle this respectfully. Elena answered that he had already made it public. He pressed his lips together. That tiny movement was the closest thing to guilt she had seen. Celeste lifted her chin and said he had told her Elena had stopped being a wife years ago. Then Elena noticed the child's face. He had Adrian's eyes. Same shape. Same lashes. Same careful way of watching a room. It was like seeing a mirror in a stranger's house. She asked how old he was. 7. The number landed hard. Years ago, Elena and Adrian had wanted a child of their own. There had been specialist visits, miscarriages, and a silence that grew between them. Adrian had built a second fatherhood while telling Elena grief required patience. The child looked down at his plate, confused by the room around him, and Elena understood he was not the enemy either. Adrian told her not to do this here. Elena smiled without warmth. Then she looked around her own dining room and understood the cruelty of the evening. He had not brought her there to explain. He had brought her to witness her own replacement. Elena did not sleep. She changed out of the gown, tied her hair back, sat in her office under a single lamp that made the room feel more like a deposition than a home. She opened every envelope she had taken from Adrian's desk. By midnight, the picture was no longer ugly. It was engineered. There were utility bills for a townhouse in North Scottsdale, school forms, a second emergency contact sheet signed by Adrian 6 months earlier. Furniture invoices that matched pieces in this house. If he had copied one life into another room. Then came the report that changed everything. A sealed DNA test, not from a clinic but from a private law firm lab. The result was blunt. Adrian Whitaker was the child's biological father. Elena sat very still. She remembered every time he had acted wounded when she asked simple questions. Then she found the final page. A marriage license. Celeste Whitaker. Married 2 years before Adrian ever met Elena. Elena read it again. Celeste was not the mistress. Celeste was wife number 2. Maybe wife number 3 if the sealed divorce filing in the folder was real. The cruelty was in the care. Matching dates. Duplicate cards. Adjusted beneficiaries. Children moved between addresses like luggage. This was not a secret passion. It was a system. She opened the storage inventory next and found safe deposit access logs, alias documentation, and property transfers linked to trust revisions. Adrian had built financial compartments around each lie. Elena stood so fast the chair hit the wall. She was no longer a wife waiting for an explanation. She was the woman holding the evidence. And evidence was a language the powerful could not easily talk over. Elena called the family law attorney before sunrise, then the private investigator, then the bank. Each call made the room smaller. Each answer made Adrian look weaker. She took notes in a hand so steady it surprised her. The lawyer confirmed the license. The investigator confirmed the Scottsdale address. The bank confirmed a joint safe deposit box Adrian had opened under an alias tied to both households. The alias had also been used on insurance mailers and property transfers. Elena told the attorney she wanted everyone there today. The attorney warned there would be no soft landing. Elena said she was done landing softly. By 9 o'clock, invitations were sent to Adrian, Celeste, and the Whitaker board chairman. She chose the room herself, a downtown legal conference suite with glass walls and perfect acoustics. A place where lies had to stand up straight. On the drive there, she reviewed the order of the documents: DNA report first for certainty, marriage license second for shock, bank record third for motive. When Adrian arrived, his eyes flicked to the folder and changed. He knew she had found it. Celeste came next, carrying her son and anger like a shield. For one suspended moment, the two women stared at each other. Then the child looked from one face to the other and whispered, "Mama?" Adrian flinched. Elena did not. She laid the marriage license on the table, then the DNA report, then the bank record. One by one. Deliberately. And the balance of power moved across the glass. The board chairman read the marriage license twice, then took off his glasses and set them down carefully. That tiny act was louder than shouting. Everyone in the room understood that what came next would not be managed with charm. He asked Adrian if it was accurate. Adrian tried to speak, but Celeste cut in first. Her voice was no longer triumphant. It was stripped raw. She said he told her Elena was gone. Adrian answered that he handled everything and that both women were never meant to collide. Never meant to collide. That was the sickness of him. He had built a life on distance. Separate homes. Separate schools. Separate stories. He believed cruelty worked best when each woman stood alone and each institution saw only the version of him it had been assigned. Elena slid a final page forward. A ledger from the safe deposit box. Offshore transfers. Trust revisions. House deeds. Tuition payments routed through shell accounts. Not just betrayal. Theft. The room went still. The chairman asked for Adrian's resignation before the word fraud even finished landing. No one interrupted. No one rescued him. Adrian said Elena's name, and Elena told him not to use it like they were still married. Celeste sat down hard. Her son clung to her sleeve. Elena saw the collapse in Celeste's face and hated Adrian for that too. This was not clean victory. It was fallout. But for the first time in years, the room was built around the truth, and the truth had finally become heavier than his voice. By evening, the Whitaker name was already changing shape in the mouths of the city's polite people. Board members stopped returning calls. Donations froze. Assistants who once sounded eager now sounded cautious. Adrian's perfect image began to crack in public, exactly where he feared it most. Elena sat in the back seat and looked at her hands. They were steady now. She had expected victory to feel like fire. Instead it felt like winter. Clean. Quiet. Final. It felt like a room after a storm, when nothing can be placed back the same way again. Her attorney texted that emergency custody talks would begin in the morning. Celeste would not disappear. Her son would not disappear. Neither would the cost of what Adrian had done. The legal unraveling would be slow and invasive. Elena thought about Celeste's face in the conference room and about the child's whisper. Adrian had depended on isolation. Now the damage had witnesses. Then another message arrived. No name. Just an attachment. Elena opened it. A scanned envelope. On the front, for your mother. Inside was an older DNA request form with Elena's name on it. Underneath was a date from the year her first child had died. Elena closed her eyes. The lie was not finished. It had roots. It had started long before Celeste, long before the gala, maybe even before the marriage she had called the beginning. Somewhere in that ruined family tree, someone else had been keeping receipts. She thought of her mother, of old silences, of stories that had always gone blurry around dates. So yes, she won the room. She won the name. She won the truth that could be proven today. But some betrayals do not end when exposed. They only change hands. That's the story. Sometimes justice arrives with a bruise still under it. Stay with me, and I'll bring you the next one that starts with a secret and ends with a shock.